Roger. Okay, and then the snipers or Sierra 4 can come up and support you there.
Your metal storm door, aluminum, possibly a screen and a window. Over.
Roger. Be advised that Sierra 2 will be deploying onto the roof of the garage and restaurant due west of the den.
Roger, copy. Sierra 2 deploying onto the roof of the garage restaurant area west of the den. Over.
Just observed what appears to be movement in the bottom left-hand corner of the window right next to the door.
Roger, copy. Movement, bottom left-hand window near the door.
Okay, so it'd be right in front where the truck is parked. Directly behind the truck. Do we see the tail end of a... Where's that truck located from that blue car?
Safe space is looking out again.
Drapes are open. Somebody looking out.
Charlie, copy that. Drapes are open. If someone looked out, then drapes are closed.
I have a male subject. The male subject at the back of the motel. At the back of the motel.
Alpha, Dan, Alpha 1. He's on the roof there by the antenna.
Roger, I'm trying to raise him. There was one male subject came out the back of the motel to the corner. I challenged him and he went back into the back of the motel. I lost track of him. We have one shot fired. One shot fired. Appears to be inside the den.
One subject outside the den, in behind the house.
Is he armed? Sierra 1 Alpha 10.
He's on the roof. Somebody's on the roof.
Sierra 1 sees him. He's right in me. He's got a gun. He has a gun. He's armed. We have a shot. Sierra 4 has a shot in his back. Somebody on the garage. Somebody on the garage.
Carry Sierra 4. Half a dozen shots fired from the subject.
Alpha 10, Sierra team has a shot. We're going to take him out.
Controller here, go ahead. Over.
Hey, Badger's down on the roof. Badger's down on the roof. Roger, keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on him. Not moving. Not moving. Keep an eye. Keep an eye. Badger's down. No movement. No movement. Did we see only one subject or did we see two subjects? Different subjects were seen. Two different subjects seen. Roger, two subjects. Two subjects. Blonde-haired one is still unaccounted. The blonde-haired still unaccounted.
Subject is still unaccounted for. Over.
That side, blue coat, arms in the air.
Charlie, Sierra 4, female, blue coat has left the building, hands in the air, hands empty. Copy, Charlie, copy that.
What's in the motel? Hands up, black. Badger's still not moved on the roof, and the rifle is underneath him.
Copy, Badger, still on the roof, rifle underneath him. Over.
Roger, two Badgers in custody, one cold Badger, two warm Badgers.
Roger, copy that. Over. Copy, Sierra 4, male Badger in custody. Over.
Well done, sniper team.
When I sat down with him in prison, face to face, I mean, I just remember his eyes. They just seemed lifeless and certainly cold. You know, you hear the expression sort of steely eyes. Well, he had steely eyes. There was sort of a psychopathic element to him. I didn't see, at least at that time, any compassion whatsoever. He wasn't sorry about anything. He was sort of defiant that he had every right to do what he did.
Well, as you probably already know, the fellow that was shot and killed earlier this morning or whatever was my younger brother.
Yes.
I would like to make a phone call to let my mother know. I don't know if she knows or not. I really don't care what happens to me. Like, whatever you guys want to know, I'll let you know, but I have things that I want because I don't know, not everybody knows, but I have spots in my lungs and I don't want to go see a doctor. But I would like to spend some time with my fiance till, I don't know if this is possible or not, but till tomorrow morning, till we leave, I'll give you guys whatever you want to know.
I got the sense that this was somebody who was going to go on perhaps a spree, if not for the fact that he was thwarted when he was. Robert Sand, he didn't care. He wasn't going back to prison without a fight, and he was going to take out anybody who got in his way. Dennis Strongquill probably saved some lives that night by sacrificing his own.
It happens, right? You get out of the vehicle and you fire some shots at the police car.
Yes.
Okay. The police car backs up, you get back in the vehicle, turn around, and you're coming the same way the police car is heading, right?
Following them.
You're following them, right? And as you said, you eventually end up, you're coming into town, or it looks like you're coming into some kind of town. The police car ends up eventually at the police station, right? There's another confrontation and more shots are fired. But between the first time that you fire shots and the last time you fire shots with this police car, did you shoot it all while you were following them?
I really don't remember, Joe.
Okay.
It's a possibility. But if it was, it would have been with the shotgun too.
Okay. At any time, did you have any other firearm other than a shotgun?
We had lots of firearms.
No, but were you using any other firearm other than a shotgun?
I don't think so. All the shotguns were in the truck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if there was any other one in there.
At any time, did the thought come to, holy shit, let's get my brother some medical attention? Did it appear that bad, or?
I looked, well, after we were in the hotel room, or just before the hotel room, after all this stuff had calmed down, my fiance called her mother, who's a nurse, and
Excuse me.
asked her some questions or something, but I think the phone went dead. And then when we got to the hotel room, I looked at it. He seemed all right. He was in pain. All the bullet wounds had exit wounds. They all looked superficial. Like, there's one in his arm, and I know shots in the arm can't really kill you unless they're infected. And there was one in his shoulder blade that looked like it went in and come out 4 inches later.
Excuse me, Joe, can I talk to you outside there for a minute, please?
Sure.
Lori Bell, she's an interesting character, of course, in all this because her lawyer tried to paint her as just this unwitting accomplice who was just kind of along for the ride, really didn't know what these brothers were capable of. Almost naive, impressionable young woman infatuated with love of Robert who just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That was their take.
Allow them to be together for a while, and they were then going to be separated again, and then Rob wanted to give us a statement, which it's his doing, it was his suggestion, and we said we think we could work something out, and we have.
It was kind of pathetic watching the two of them together, knowing what they had just done. You know, it was just like watching two sappy lovebirds, you know, making googly eyes at each other. You know, to see them in that moment, if you didn't know the backstory, if somebody just showed you the video of them together and you didn't know any of the context of what they had done, you'd probably look at that and say, oh, there's just a couple of young kids in love. So it was almost unsettling in that sense because how could they be acting this way, knowing the circumstances now that had brought them together there? It was bizarre.
So,
This is pretty tough on you, not being a smoker in this room.
Not really.
Tim just says he might walk me down. Oh, Tim. These are Tim's daughters. Who is he?
like Tim.
Well, the prosecutor in the trial was the best we had in the province at the time. Bob Morrison was a dynamic prosecutor, and He certainly pulled no punches, as we would have expected. Very emotional, very bombastic, and certainly some of his questioning of witnesses, some of his appeals to the jury were, you could tell that this was something that he found just so distasteful. The other thing is the defense here, in those early days of the trial, there was a push here to try and do away with the first-degree murder charge. Now in Canada, murdering or killing a police officer in the line of duty that's not sort of accidental, there carries with it the presumption that it's a first-degree murder, that there's that special protection afforded to police. The defense lawyer here for Robert Sand, Greg Brodsky, he made a motion to do away with that first-degree charge.
He asked me to act for him, and I did. I thought he was a very intense young man. He said that he wanted to plead guilty to the charge on condition they dropped the charge against Lori Bell. He wanted to ensure that everybody understood that she was asleep in the back seat of the car. That was his version of events. At the time of the shooting, the Crown obviously had a different view. The fact that she wasn't asleep in the back of the car, because as she said to Rose Ferguson just prior to the shooting, she was yelling, kill him, to Robert Sand.
Just looking at him every day in the courtroom, he just struck me as such a cold, dispassionate human being that the anger was palpable coming off him. And that, of course, would ultimately play itself out near the very end of the trial when Robert Sand leaped out of the prisoner's box. He was shackled, but he managed to elevate himself enough and ended up landing on his own lawyer or his lawyer's assistant.
Knocked a number of people down and tried to cut my junior's throat.
Just absolute chaos in the courtroom with sheriff's officers rushing in, people yelling and screaming. What we didn't know immediately is that Robert Sand had smuggled a razor blade into the courtroom.
The Crowns thought that he was trying to take a hostage, but who knows? In any event, he apologized to my junior before the case was over. This is an unusual combination, Danny and Robert Sand and Lori Bell. I don't know that kind of combination would ever be repeated. One thing is they didn't have shotguns in police cars. There was no shotgun in this car. There should have been. It was after this case mandated that shotguns should be in all police cruiser cars. Bulletproof vests were mandated. Constable Strongquill was not wearing a bulletproof vest. The holster that Constable Strongquill was wearing was made for a right-handed person. He was a left-handed person. What he was presented with at the time of necessity was a club instead of a gun, because he couldn't get it out of his holster. When he did get it out of his holster, the magazine fell out and was on the floor. The one bullet that was left in the chamber couldn't be fired. Nobody knows why. It's awful, the things that went wrong.
Of course, you also have to keep in mind, and this is something as a journalist, I'm always reminding myself that we're dealing with, this is not a movie, this is not a video game, this is real life. These are real people with families and communities. So you always try and handle these things with as much compassion, respect as possible.
Quebec 46, go ahead. 2-1, can you take off Southeast and Sergeant Richards? And anywhere else that you get along. 10-4, can you try and get us a better location, please? We're outside the RCMP office in Russell. Okay, 10-4, I understand it's a black pickup with Alberta plates, 3 occupants. 10-4, we're going right to the hospital. We're sorry. 10-4, so you got him, you're heading to the hospital? Yeah, no, I can't, but that's what I can. We gotta get somebody here quick. 10-4, ambulance is on the way. Which member's down? Strongquill. Injury? I believe he's down. One member down.
Yeah, that was very difficult to hear. That is the first time for me hearing that, and that is very difficult for me to hear. Just knowing that he was at home an hour before that. Well, this is very important for the community to put in for your father, is because he loved baseball. The baseball diamond was here. For him to remind him of who he was. When he was younger, it was all about ball. Every weekend, your dad he would go everywhere with everyone. But over the years, you'd probably hear more stories about that. But this is one of the gifts that I guess the town, our community, did for him, to honor him and to have that respect for him. I attended the very first hearing. It was something that I needed. I needed to see who did it. I needed to be there and look them in the eye and to show them what they had done, what they left behind. And I had my daughter Corey there also with me. And my sister and my aunt came along with me also, just to support. I didn't attend to the whole trial because that was more than enough that I had seen. I just didn't want to be there. I needed to know who they were, but I didn't want to be there through the whole trial. I don't think I could have put myself through that. Ignorant, just the way they were looking, like this was nothing to them. They sat there and they smiled in that box, and when I was looking at them, that's what they were doing. They were smiling.
When it comes to forgiving them, I don't think I'm quite ready to do it. Versus thinking, like, what would my dad want? Would he want me to forgive them? Or what? Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's just... I honestly can't explain my anger to those people. It's just there. Only getting worse and worse. Angrier and angrier the more I figure things out.
Dropping off female youth to 26 Alpha.
I think from the family's perspective, if that's the choice they want to make, I'm glad for them. From my standpoint, I don't need to meet him whatsoever. I'll go through my life knowing what he did. I'm happy for how the family reacts, how they're going to deal with it. I'll let the family deal with it that way. Ricky I've met, I keep in contact with Joey. Teresa I keep in contact with. The first wife, I've kept in contact with her. When this was happening, I told her I wanted it more to be about Dennis. I guess my only wish would be is that we as members out there be able to communicate and engage our community people. They know who we are. They know we have a job to do.
So Lori Bell's sentencing was manslaughter, which she was convicted of. I mean, it can run the gamut. You could be sentenced to no jail time, all the way up to life. It really is the charge that has the widest disparity of sentence. Unlike Robert Sand, I mean, there were tears, and were there tears, were they remorseful tears, or were they, I'm sorry I got caught and my life is ruined kind of tears? Who knows what the future has in store for Robert Sand? Does he ever get out? I have my doubts. I think a lot of people in Canada, they assume that everybody gets out. Well, that's not true. Our prisons are actually filled with quote-unquote lifers. They tend to be people who were convicted of first-degree murder. First-degree murder is a pretty rare conviction in this country. It's hard to get. You have to prove premeditation, sort of a cold-bloodedness to it. There aren't a lot of first-degree murder convictions on a yearly basis in Winnipeg. Like, you could count on one hand, if that. My understanding is Robert Sand has been far from a model inmate. There's been issues. There will probably continue to be issues. So when he gets to 2026 and he's able to ask the parole board, does he actually get released? I wouldn't necessarily put money on it. For Ricky Strongquill to get to a point in his life where he realized, this is not healthy for me, I need to take the steps for me. This wasn't about Robert. This wasn't about anything but a man who had obviously had a real rough go in his life, deciding that this is something he needed to do. And it's remarkable. It truly is, and it's a rarity, and it's refreshing.
I came to know Ricky some time ago when he wrote a letter to the prisoner, Robert, saying that it was time for him to move on and to get rid of the rage and the grief and the anger that he'd felt for so long that was consuming him. Here he is. Hey, Ricky.
Nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
You too.
Welcome to Abbotsford.
Yes, thank you, yeah.
It's going to be quite a day.
Yeah, first time in Abbotsford.
Yeah? You steeled for this? You ready for this?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, a few years now, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've got a car out in the parking lot.
Okay.
And we'll just, if you're ready for this, we'll just head straight there.
All right.
And today I'm not acting as an ED, I'm acting as a facilitator in a restorative justice process that will involve the youngest son, family survivor of homicide in a murder case that happened many years ago, and the man responsible for the harms in that family at a local prison. Both men are looking forward to a particularly healing day, and I'm anticipating a really helpful outcome for both of them by the time this time is over. This one was a cakewalk, really. in the sense that both of them wanted to meet. It was really just a matter of talking to the institution about a suitable day and a suitable place, and making sure that Ricky was cleared through all the bureaucratic procedures that it takes to get into a federal prison. I think anyone who witnessed it would be astonished that there wasn't more anger or outrage or hurt, more emotion. And yet it's not for me to say what it should be, so I just kind of support them and facilitate the conversation. So, you're one of a double handful of people that have done this, Ricky, over the last many years.
Yeah.
How do you feel it went?
It was definitely liberating. It's just light and like a load is off, and you know, and it was pretty amazing experience. So, you know, you told me that I was going to discover a very gentle man, and I did. You know, he definitely took a change for the better. You know.
Yeah, I tried not to oversell him. I wanted you to experience him for yourself. Mm-hmm. Were there any surprises?
No surprises, no. Well, like I told Robert, I said, I'm done with it. I'm absolutely done with it. And we don't need to talk about, you know, about those dark days, you know. And we didn't. We mentioned a few things.
The only format is past, present, future. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about the fact pattern, what led to the, you know, to the harms. Mm-hmm. What was the incident? Mm-hmm. And then maybe, I mean, we frequently have, in cases like yours, people wanting to know what was going on in your life that shaped and formed you into the outlaw you became. And in Robert's case, I mean,